From childhood, I was cherished and raised by my grandparents. My beloved grandmother passed away in a minor accident. During that time, out of the blue, I received a message from my long unheard from sister-in-law. The message read, "I need you to take care of your grandmother who passed away 3 months ago." There was so much I wanted to say, but my cherished grandmother was no longer here. I witnessed it with my own eyes. This call would serve as a catalyst for everything to come to light. I am Linda Thompson, a 45-year-old single woman. The last time I had a significant male presence in my life was back in college. After parting with him, I dove headfirst into the working world post-graduation, laboring in the marketing department of a major cosmetics company where overtime and weekends were the norm. Before I knew it, I had missed my chance to get married. 6 years ago, I changed careers and took a desk job at a nursing home. I used to commute for an hour and a half one way on crowded trains, and if I made it back home on the last train, I considered myself lucky. Now, I work at a place less than a 10-minute bike ride away from home. I get the usual days off as per the calendar, and overtime is almost non-existent. But that's not why I changed jobs either. I've never moved out of my childhood home. I'm confident in my financial standing, and I'm pretty good at household chores, if I do say so myself. So why haven't I moved out? Because I love my family, especially my dear grandmother. I was born and raised in California. My family consists of my parents, grandparents, and my brother Brian Thompson, who is 5 years older than me. Brian is now 50 years old. While I love my family, my feelings toward my brother are complex. I used to adore him as my brother. He was gentle and caring, always looking after his little sister. But Brian changed after graduating from college. He got a job in car sales, moved out early on, and married a woman from his workplace just 2 years later. From then on, we gradually grew apart. He never shows up at our childhood home, not during Thanksgiving, spring break, or even Christmas. I vaguely know that he lives somewhere in the South, but that's about it. I don't even know if he has children. I can't remember the last time I saw Brian's face or when we last spoke on the phone. It feels like it's been at least 5 years. Ever since I became a manager, I've been extremely busy. I'm leaving everything home related to you. Those are the last words I remember from Brian. My current impression of him is summed up as, what an unfeeling man. That's why I made a career change and decided not to move away from my childhood home, to protect it. My parents are both retired. My grandfather, now 93 years old, suffered a stroke a few years ago. Although he recovered, he requires constant care and can't live independently. Currently, my parents are taking care of him. And then there's my grandmother, Betty Thompson, aged 92, my dearly beloved Grandma Betty. In our house, both of my parents worked, so it was my grandparents who took care of my siblings and me when we were little, especially Grandma Betty. She taught me everything I needed to survive. These days, she can't get out much, but she's lively enough to walk around the house freely. That's why I decided to change my job to work in a nursing home so that I could be there for her if anything happened. One particular day, as I was getting ready to leave the house, I called out, "I'm off to work." Grandma Betty called from behind me, "Linda, you forgot something." "Huh?" "I didn't forget anything," I replied. She handed me a few black licorice candies, saying, "Here, have some hard candies." "Oh right, thanks," I said with a smile. Licorice has always been a favorite of both Grandma Betty and mine. I put them in my suit pocket and left the house with a smile. Then tragedy struck, or maybe it's called a tragedy because it happened so suddenly, but that doesn't matter now. Grandma Betty had a severe accident. According to my father, after hanging laundry on the balcony upstairs as usual, she missed the step on the stairs and fell. It was something we always feared. We always told her to leave the laundry to Mom and Dad, that the stairs were dangerous and not to go upstairs. But Grandma Betty, like me, was stubborn. She believed in doing what she could do by herself. No one is to blame. It was just an unfortunate accident that could have happened at any time. Everything happened quickly after that. Grandma Betty, who had suffered complex fractures through her femur and pelvis, never made it home from the hospital. Just 4 months later, she passed away due to old age. Of course, I was sad, and I did cry. I cried and cried until I broke down. But I am an adult now, and now I am the breadwinner of this house. I don't have time to wallow in sorrow. Funeral, cremation, interment, I had to take care of everything. Grandma Betty was originally from the Midwest, and we don't have any close relatives to contact. We decided at a family meeting to have a funeral only with close family members. We had to invite my brother and his wife. I thought they would come without hesitation, but I was wrong. I couldn't reach them by phone or WhatsApp. I also sent an email but received no reply. I sent a text message as a last resort, and the reply came on the day of the cremation. I'm very busy overseas for work. Sorry, but I can make it. I'll send the money later, it said. I don't care about the money. Upon seeing the message, I found myself speaking out loud unintentionally. Could his job really be so important that he can't even make time to say goodbye to our grandma, who adored us so much? It's hard to accept. Into Grandma's casket, her makeup impeccably done, looking like she was just peacefully sleeping, we placed flowers and a photo of Grandpa, along with her favorite black candy. Something changed in my perception of my brother while doing this. From that moment, I started to despise him. Since then, the seasons have changed and it is now winter. For me, it doesn't matter whether it's spring, summer, autumn, or winter. I don't care if it's always winter or always summer. I've even considered quitting this job, but Grandpa is still alive. My parents will need care at some point too. I still need to earn a lot for that. With those thoughts, I was mechanically getting through my work during the lunch break on a weekday, my heart filled with emptiness. Then I got a call from an unexpected person. If it hadn't been registered, I wouldn't have answered. My smartphone displayed sister-in-law. She is Heather Thompson, 46 years old. She's my brother's wife. In other words, she's my sister-in-law. The only time we talked was briefly after their wedding. That's all I remember. Why would she be calling now? Maybe I should just ignore it, but the ringing wouldn't stop. With a sigh, I picked up the phone. Yes, this is Linda. Sorry to disturb you at work. This is Heather, Brian's wife. It's been a while, Heather said, her tone apologetic. All right. Despite being older and in a higher position, Heather had always been humble. When she married my brother, she made a point to greet my parents and me, even on Brian's behalf. Simply put, she's a good person. That's why I was puzzled as to why she was calling now. It's okay, but do you need something? I asked, trying not to sound too cold. It's difficult to bring this up, Heather hesitated before continuing. It's about Betty, your grandmother. What happened to my grandmother? I asked, my voice rising. We've been caring for her at my husband's request, but it's been over a month past the promised date. Could you possibly come to pick her up? What? I was taken aback. So, you've been taking care of Betty at your place. Wait a minute. I tried to make sense of it. Are you saying you've been looking after my grandmother, Betty, who passed away 3 months ago? The question sounded absurd, but Heather's response was just as bewildering. Yes, we've been taking care of Betty at our... Wait, she died 3 months ago. Heather's voice was filled with genuine surprise. Let's take a moment to calm down, I suggested, and Heather agreed. A few minutes later, after regaining my composure, I explained to Heather that my grandmother had indeed passed away. Heather's response was perplexing. She said, "We were told that your grandmother needed care and that she would be staying with us until arrangements were made at her home." Heather seemed equally confused, as she and Brian had been living with my grandmother, who was no longer alive. There were two possible conclusions. Either we were both telling the truth, or Brian was lying. I had suspected that Brian might be involved in some deceit, though I couldn't fathom why he would tell such an obvious lie that would unravel so quickly. Before I pursued this line of thought further, I had some immediate steps to take. I wanted to reach Brian right away, but his mobile phone seemed to be unreachable. I told Heather, "I haven't used my husband's cell phone either. He won't let me." Heather replied, "I don't have access to his phone either, but I might be able to reach him on my cell while he's at home." I added, "He's been working remotely more often lately. If I ask, he might be able to arrange a video call." Face-to-face communication would certainly be more effective, but there was a complication. I wasn't even sure where Brian and Heather were living. Heather explained, "We've been in Vice City, California for over 10 years. It's close enough for us to visit your place, Linda." We agreed to arrange a video call with Brian on Heather's cell phone later that night and ended the call. We were left with mixed feelings, but at least Vice City was nearby. How much deception could Brian possibly expect me to tolerate? The thought of having to care for a stranger's elderly woman just a few months after Grandma's death was outrageous. No, it was repugnant. When I got home, I called Brian on Heather's cell phone at the arranged time of 8 p.m. Heather had kindly agreed to wait in my room, showing her support and enthusiasm. Despite my numerous attempts to contact him, Brian answered Heather's call after only 3 rings. I made sure to put the call on speaker so Heather could hear the conversation as well. "Heather, where are you right now? You haven't even started preparing dinner," Brian said, his tone imposing and arrogant. He didn't sound like the brother I once knew. "It's me, Brian," I said firmly. "Huh?" He sounded genuinely confused. I let him process my words. "That's Linda, isn't it? Where's Heather?" Brian finally asked. "I'm here," Heather replied tersely. "You? Why are you with Linda?" Brian stammered for a moment, then quickly regained his composure. Don't tell me you've told Linda about that matter. Yes, I did, Heather answered calmly. I told you it was too soon to discuss this. Ryan's sudden shift in attitude was clearly related to our grandmother. I heard from Heather that you've been working remotely lately, I began. What about it? I could almost picture the scowl on his face. Why don't we discuss this face to face via a remote work app? I'll send you the ID and password, I suggested. If you refuse, I'll leave with Linda and go back home, Heather chimed in as a cover. Fine, Brian agreed begrudgingly. I sent the ID and password to Brian using Heather's phone. We waited for a moment. When the video call connected, the face on the screen was slightly fuller than I remembered, but it was undoubtedly my brother Brian. It's Brian. So, what's so urgent that we need to talk face to face? I'm busy here. Brian's attempt to feign ignorance was infuriating. Isn't it obvious? It's about our grandmother. What do you mean by saying we should take in our grandmother, who died 3 months ago? To my surprise, Brian responded calmly. You must be misunderstanding something, he continued in a collected tone. Our grandmother isn't dead. I'm taking care of her at my place. It was you, Linda, who requested this, wasn't it? What? I was stunned into silence. Was he really so desperate to keep Heather in the dark that he would lie so blatantly? Could my own brother be this deceitful? I was so furious that tears welled up in my eyes. But I sent you a text message, I said, struggling to hold back my tears. I don't remember that. Grandma's here with me right now. Do you want me to bring her to the camera? Yes, I want you to bring her here, I demanded, trying to maintain control. Brian, showing no sign of remorse, left his seat. A few minutes later, he returned with an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Say hello, Grandma. Linda, it's been a while. I'm Betty, the old woman said in a halting voice. The pretense was wearing thin. My anger surged again. The woman on the screen was a stranger. This was not my beloved grandmother. For one, my grandmother would never call me Linda. As you age, your appearance changes. She's been showing signs of dementia recently, so it's understandable if her memories of you are a bit fuzzy. Brian insisted, sticking to his denial. So, you're rejecting the death certificate issued by the district office? I asked, my patience wearing thin. Of course, documents can be forged these days, he smirked. I had anticipated this and was ready with my counter evidence. Just wait, I'll provide proof, I said. Leaving Brian, who was clearly bewildered, I stepped out of the room. A few minutes later, I returned with the evidence. Well, if it isn't Brian, long time no see, you ungrateful wretch, Grandpa's voice rang out. Grandpa, you were supposed to be bedridden. Brian's eyes widened in shock at the sudden appearance of my grandfather. I was ready to die at one point. Even now, I can go to the bathroom on my own, but my mind is as sharp as ever, Grandpa said. I've heard all about this from Linda. Are you saying that the woman next to you is my wife, Betty? Nonsense. Betty was much more beautiful. Cornered, Brian abruptly hung up the phone, likely trying to disconnect from the video call. Heather, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. Are you running away, Brian? Heading to Catherine's place? I asked, watching as Brian's face turned pale, even through the computer screen. How do you know about that? Brian's voice wavered. I've suspected it for a while, I said, joined by Heather. Your grandmother has repeatedly mentioned Catherine. Catherine is neither my name nor my mother's. Well, Brian stammered. I had confirmed with Linda that she had no recollection of the name Catherine. For some time, I had suspected infidelity and hired a private detective to investigate. The findings were swift and conclusive. Photographs of Brian with his mistress, Catherine, who is in her late 20s and a subordinate at work. Confirmation that Brian's grandmother was Catherine's grandmother. And evidence that Brian was preparing to divorce Heather while planning to shift the burden of his grandmother's care to my family home. His plan was to eventually leave Heather without blame and remarry Catherine using every possible means. Heather's woman's intuition about Brian's affair led her to this discovery. Despite her demeanor, she proved to be incredibly astute and resourceful. Do you have anything to say for yourself? I asked Brian, my intent solely to hear his response. I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me. I didn't mean to deceive you, Heather, or you, Linda. I'll break up with Catherine, Brian said, bowing his head through the screen. Technology has certainly advanced, Grandpa said wryly. We can see your tearful face from afar. Fool, Grandpa continued. After using Betty and betraying my beloved granddaughter and daughter-in-law, I never want to see you again. This is the last time. Linda, you too, Brian said, addressing me. Well, the most authoritative person here is Grandpa. And by the way, I never want to see you again either, Heather. I've already completed the divorce mediation process. I'm heading back to my parents' house. Let's settle this in court next. Well then, goodbye, big brother. With those words, I clicked the exit button on the video call. The seasons changed, and it was now the autumn equinox. I visited my grandmother's grave alone. With my hands clasped together, I mentally reflected on recent events. Brian had divorced Heather, and the outcome was overwhelmingly in Heather's favor. Brian had to pay a substantial amount in alimony and even came back to his family home, only to be met with Grandpa's virtual disavowal. Grandpa's will explicitly stated that Brian was no longer considered family. Brian's plan to remarry Catherine fell through. No woman would marry a divorced man in his 50s with no savings and substantial debt. He eventually lost his job at the automobile company and now lives in a cheap one-bedroom apartment, working odd jobs and paying alimony. At his age and with limited qualifications, re-employment has been difficult. It's a classic case of reaping what you sow. Much of this information came from Heather, who has since become a good friend. We often meet for tea and enjoy each other's company. With everything settled, I stood up for my grandmother's gravestone and said, "Grandmother, I'll come again." As I stood there, a brisk breeze swept through, and I heard a voice I cherished deeply. "Linda, thank you. Please take care of your grandpa for a little while." "Grandmother?" I whispered, startled. As I looked down, I noticed something in my right hand, a piece of black candy. I hadn't brought any black candy as an offering today. I'm not particularly religious or superstitious. Could it be a sign from grandmother? No, that seemed unlikely. There's always black candy at the altar, so I must have absent-mindedly picked one up and forgotten about it. Yet the thought that my grandmother might still be watching over me gave me comfort and strength. "Thank you, grandmother," I murmured, gazing up at the sky before leaving the graveyard.